Welcome to Wire Guild. This tutorial is for those really awkward, deep faceted gemstones that we've all managed to buy in the past and then don't really know what to do with because the stone itself is so deep that anything made for it would wobble and fall over. So this is a way of making it so it doesn't do that. We're going to use 21 gauge dead soft square wire, 21 gauge half hard half round wire, and then of course your deep faceted stone. These stones can be anything and they tend to be very deeply cut because they're trying to retain the colour in the stone. So something with a rich colour usually have quite a deep cut, or can do. And it's a way that the gem cutters get the stone that they want. So this is my stone, and as you can see, it's almost like it's almost like half a marble. It's that wobbly and rocks around all over the place. But it's very pretty. It's a lovely colour. And there's no reason we can't set it. So I've got my 4 pieces of square silver wire, and I've got a ruler here. Now I have about 10 inches in length. What I'm aiming for is a nice amount of wire that's going to be able to go round the stone, up to the top of the bale, and then come back down again. So half round wire, 21 gauge, and I've just put a little kink in there. And I'm going to start and bind in the middle of the wires. If your stone is much larger than mine, add an extra couple of inches onto the length of the wires that you've got. But it will depend. We need a little bit of extra length for the heart shape, which is our support around the stone. So I'm just binding in the middle with my half round wire, getting those bindings nice and neat and straight, flattening them down with my pliers. Now when I put my stone near these bindings here, I don't want it to cover too much of the stone. You need your binding at the bottom to be nowhere near as wide, the widest part of the stone, because we're going to bring the side wires in and they're going to create the little claws, if you like, that hold the stone in place. Now let's just trim these down and trim that one off, and we'll press that down. There we go. So as you can see, my stone, I could do it sideways or I could do it longways. It is an oval, even though it's a very rounded kind of oval. I'm going to do it longways, so that's just a nice amount. It is definitely less than the width. So now I need to make these 4 wires go around my stone. These are nice fat round nose pliers. I've got some oval ones here, which actually are not far off the size of the stone. You could use a piece of dowel, you could use anything, but I'm just going to get this started with these bale pliers. And as you can see, I've just got a little curve on it there. Haven't gone too far. I'm just very gently. Here, I'll show you with my round nose. Make sure that the bindings don't split. And I'm just going at the side of those bindings. Can you see there? And then I'm just easing little tiny motions, easing that wire in very gently. If you grab hold and bend, what you might find is that the area at the side of the binding will bend, but the binding itself won't have any give. And what we're aiming for is a nice even. See, that's too big. It's sort of bowing out on that side, so that needs to come in. So gently with my fingers, I'll ease this out and keep popping the stone back in until I've got it so that I like it. I'm still not totally happy with that. It's not even. So I will do some more manipulating with fingers and pliers. Let's have a look. And being careful not to split those bindings. It's easy to do. If you put the pliers over the top, squeeze hard. There, that's better. That's getting tighter. A little bit more. I do believe that you can buy shapes that are set sizes that you can bend your wire around, but I never found the need. It's alright if you just play with it enough. There we go. Now then, can you see that I've got this gap here at the top above the stone? I like to have a gap above the stone, and where I get to the point where I want it to meet, I'm just bending the wires ever so slightly there and bend them there. Only doing this with my fingers, and then those wires come together nice and neatly. Let's just pop that stone out, and then I have my little bends to follow. I'm making sure that the wires stay in their 2 layers of 4 wire, if you know what I mean. I've got one set coming from one side, one set coming from the other, and I'm maintaining those 2 rows of 4 wires. I don't want this to be a clump. I want 2 really nice, perfectly neat lines. So let's put a bend in my half round wire again, and I'm going to wrap around all 8 of the wires and flatten down each time with the pliers. What we're aiming for is this wonderful neatness in the wire to get something that looks almost as if it's just a strip of silver rather than 4 individual wires. Let's just pull that down and around. Now you could use 18 gauge half round wire if that's what you've got, but I like the 21 because it's a little bit less intrusive. It's not quite as heavy. There we go. Trim that off and then flatten down. I've probably got, oh, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7. I'm not totally sure how many wraps I've got there. I have never have a set number in mind. You could do these quite long, and it would make a lovely sort of focal bit. Let's just cut that bit off. There we go. Wrap it around a bit more. No point in cutting it off and losing that bit. I might as well add it in. There we go. Let's trim it. There are no rights and wrongs. You can't say you're going to use exactly 2 or exactly 3. That end is a little bit long. If your wire is over half of the length of the wires that it's sitting against, it will try to lift. If it's under, it just stays nice and neat. So I have my wires that are coming around that are making the framework for the stone. So taking round nose pliers, I'm going to grip the very, very back wire. Just one wire, finger inside, thumb over the top, and I'm going to bend those wires in. Now my finger's in the way. Can you see that little wire coming in now? And that produces like a rest or a support for the wires, and then they don't misshape. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Grip one wire, and it doesn't want to get hold of it, and bend it in. And just straighten that one up a bit. It doesn't quite match the one on the other side, but it's near enough. Now pliers, can you see how that's flat? Well, my stone is nowhere near flat, so if I tried to put that stone in, nothing would happen. So pliers in, and let's just lift. So I've just gone into the corner there, and I've lifted the wire. Can you see how I've got some depth? So now when I pop my stone in, it should cradle it. So let's get it the right way around. Let's push, 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 push. It should be quite tight because when we start pulling wires about, it tightens things up. There we go. So we've got a nice cradle to take the back of that deep stone. And then separating the top wire just with my fingernails. Just the top wire. And I want it just to come over the edge. So round pliers on again. I'm going to grip and very, very tiny movement. Bring that in over the edge of the stone. And you see only a little bit. And the same on the other side. Grip just the top wire with your round nose pliers and bring it in tiny. And then I can just play with it. It needs to be sufficiently over the front of the stone that that stone is not going to drop out. So when you get hold of it and check it around like that, nothing happens. However, you don't want to distort the view. I mean, your gemstone's the whole heart of the piece, so you don't want to cover it up too much. Now, as you can see, this is still very wobbly, and if that was to sit as a pendant, it would wobble on the chest. So we need to do something that will stop that wobble. So I'm going to take, that's the front wires, the front pair. So the front 2 wires, I've just moved them forward ever so slightly. Sorry, I'm going daft. Back 2 wires. It'd be daft if you made the front 2 wires into your bales, wouldn't it? Yeah, your pendant would be the wrong way around. I am so sorry. The back 2 wires. And I am just taking some more of my half round wire and I'm wrapping that around those 2 and I'm binding those 2 wires together. Can't believe I said front 2. Oh dear. And we're going to wrap that around and around nice and neat, nice and tight. There we go. The reason I'm binding these together is just to give them a slightly different kind of look. It's nice to have wires going in opposite directions. So your main wires are nice and straight and they're flowing up and down the piece. And then when you get your bindings on, you see you get this beautiful, lovely straight wires going the other way. And it's nice. I like it. So I'm wrapping around these 2 wires. And I'm going to need quite a bit because this is going to be my bale, my loop, if you like, that your chain or your thong or whatever you're putting through goes through. And this is going to create it. A little bit different from a normal one. And if you wanted, you could use a tiny loop and then put like a large jump ring on, but oops, come here. This is the next wire down and it was just getting in the way a bit. So I'm just going to bend that downwards and the same at that side. So that's the next wire back. So if we were counting from the back, the first 2 from the back would be the bales and the second 2 are going to create my heart shape. Now I've just taken the wires down and I'm bringing them to the bottom of the stone. Can you see that? The top of that heart is going to create the stop. It's going to stop the stone from wobbling. Now I need somewhere to put this wire. So that little bit that we used to hold the stone in at the back, I'm just opening it out ever so slightly. Just enough that I can put this wire in. I put a bend where the wire is going to go in so that I know where I'm working up to. I don't want to distort that heart shape at the top. And I've taken off some of the length. Round nose pliers and start that curve. Can you see that curve there? And then I can go again. And it will start to go through that little gap I made. And then I can just feed it through a little tiny bit at a time. I don't want to go past that bend that we made, which is there, because then we would pull out the heart shape that's at the top. I'm protecting that with my thumb. Let's just trim that off. And then using snipe or chain nose pliers, wherever I put them, I can just then flatten that down. Any sharp edge then would be against the inside of the pendant. Nothing to scratch you when you're wearing it. Nice and neat and out of the way. Now the same I've just managed to bend that ever so slightly, so I'm just going to rub that with my thumb. There we go. Now let's do the same at the other side. So over the top of where it's going to sit, have I got enough hole? No, let me get a little bit more room in there. Whoops. Come here. There's my bend so that I know where not to pull past. Trim off the length. There's too much length there, so all you end up doing is if you leave the length on is you just end up fighting with it. So let's start curling it. There we go. Bring that round. Little tiny movements. I'm gripping, hold, bending, grip, hold, bend, and it will start to curl the wire. Can you see how you've got a curl coming through like that? And it will curl the wire through. Now I want it to go that way. It's pushing the stone out. So I've just knocked the stone out of the way. All that manipulation in the back has just loosened it slightly. So I will put that back in a minute. So the thing is, you don't need to worry about these things. You can always correct them. So let's just trim that down. Actually makes it a little bit easier for me to get that end in there. Let's just smooth that in. You just see a little tiny bit. We're just easing that bit over. I am still holding with my thumb and finger on my left hand to stop it distorting the heart. And now I can just even up both sides. Now I don't have a stone in. Make that neat. My mother was a great believer in that the back of things should be just as neat as the front of things. So it's quite a good practice to get into. So I'm going to put my stone back in. Obviously I hadn't made the front ones quite wide enough to hold it in securely. So I'm going to move these in a little bit more. So I'm just gripping that top wire again and I'm just going to bend in. There we are. I think it was more just on that one side that wasn't enough, but we'll check both sides. Then I'm going to use the handle of my pliers and I'm going to smooth all these wires onto the stone. There. Now then, when I put this down, as you can see now, there's no wobble. These two little pieces that are like the heart shape at the top act as little outriggers or stabilizers. Now I still got loads more wire. Let's have a look. So I have two front pieces of wire, that's those two, and then I have the next two pieces of wire, and then of course the ones at the back. So the next ones at the back, so this would be the like a third from the back, second from the front. Trim them off short, and I'm just going to make those into teeny tiny little curls. There's one with my round nose pliers. Can you see that one? And come here. Don't want to get the wrong wire. And here is the other one. So I've got two little tiny loops on the inside there. Now then, two more wires at the front. What shall we do with these? These, if you like, are your design wires. You could go wherever you wanted with these. I'm going to just echo that heart shape just over the top of the binding that I'd done. So let's trim this down. I could anchor this on the side of the heart wires if I wanted, but I'm going to just tuck that inside, wrap it down the edge of where we bound. Can you see, just on that edge? And then I'm going to take it round the back because that's too long. Trim some off. press it around, down and flatten it. Nothing's coming out at the front, it's just nice and neat. Let's do the same with the other side. There we go. Take it through, does not want to go in there. My left hand tends to stop things being pulled too far. There we are. So it's like a stop. Trim off. And then flatten it down. There we go. Now, back to these two wires that we're making into our bells, which were back two wires, not the front two, the back two. And I'm continuing to bind. I probably need about 3/4 of an inch, half to 3/4 of an inch. What would that be in centimeters? Probably, what, a centimeter? Yeah, it'd be about a centimeter, wouldn't it? Let's just trim that off. Press it down. Now this end, I'm going to get it as close in there as I can. And then trim it off. Press it down with my pliers. Right then. When I cut these wires off the top, because we're going to curl this over and curl it round, just make sure all that's nice and flat. If I was to cut right up to where the binding was, there, just right at the edge, my binding would slip off because you'd have to grip on the binding to make a circle, and that would push the bindings and make them fall off. So if I cut off just beyond the binding, leaving myself a nice little piece that I can grip with my round nose pliers, I can then curl all of this, gripping onto that bit of free wire. And I'm just going to flatten that down so that I don't have to actually grip on the bound piece at all. So there's no chance of it being moved. And all I've done is just curled that round, and I'm just flattening it down ever so slightly. There we go. And then once your chain goes through there, it holds it quite securely and it doesn't wobble about too much. It will sit quite happily on the chest. There's enough for it to have a little bit of movement to make the stone sparkle, but not so it's unwieldy. So whatever your size stone, here's another one that I did, which was a bit more oval and a bit smaller. These are really pretty pendants and they do look great. There. So, a heart-shaped pendant with a deep stone. Thank you very much for watching. Happy wrapping.